Hello, dear YouTube viewers, I hope you're doing well. Okay, let's start our video. The morning light slipped through the blinds, cutting thin golden lines across the kitchen floor. David sat at the table with his coffee, flipping through the newspaper without really reading. The sound of the shower, the clatter of heels, and the faint hum of a hairdryer filled the air. Ellie was already in motion. She moved between the bedroom and the mirror, muttering under her breath about what to wear. He barely looked up when she asked, "Are you even dressed yet?" "I told you I'm not going," he said flatly, eyes still on the paper. Her reflection in the hallway mirror froze for a moment. "Not this again, David. We promised we'd go. Everyone's expecting us." "I don't care who's expecting what. I've had a long week. I just want one quiet night." The words came out heavier than he intended. Ellie sighed, setting her earrings down with a clink. "You always want quiet. You hide behind it like it's some kind of excuse." He looked up, irritation creeping into his voice. "And you hide behind people. You can't stand being alone for 5 minutes without needing an audience." That hit her. He saw it in the way her jaw tightened. "At least I still feel something," she shot back. "You're like a ghost in your own marriage." The silence that followed was sharp, uncomfortable. David folded the paper and stood, his voice lower now. "Maybe being a ghost is easier than arguing every weekend." Ellie turned away, blinking fast. She slipped on her heels, grabbed her bag, and said quietly, "Fine, I'll go alone." He wanted to stop her, to take the words back, but pride held him still. She paused at the door, one hand on the handle, her voice steadier than her eyes. "Don't wait up." When the door shut behind her, the house seemed to exhale. He stood there, listening to the faint echo of her car engine as it faded down the street. Her perfume still lingered, sweet, sharp, and haunting. He sat on the couch, the newspaper untouched beside him. The ticking clock filled the room, a sound he hadn't noticed in weeks. It was peaceful, almost comforting. But underneath that calm, something else stirred, a strange emptiness he couldn't name. For the first time in a long while, the house was silent, and David couldn't tell if it felt like freedom or loss. Rain began to fall just as dusk settled over the neighborhood, soft, rhythmic, and almost comforting. The glow of the streetlights bled faintly through the curtains, turning the living room gold and gray. David sat at the table with a plate of cold leftovers and a half-full glass of wine. The quiet wasn't oppressive anymore. It was strangely soothing. There was no tension humming under every word, no footsteps pacing in irritation, no forced laughter to fill the air. Just stillness. He leaned back in his chair, listening to the hum of the refrigerator, the creak of the old house, the gentle patter of rain on the roof. Even the sound of his own breathing felt new, heavier somehow. Every ordinary noise, the ticking clock, the distant rumble of thunder, carried more presence than usual, as though the world was slowing down just for him. He tried to remember when silence had last felt like this, not awkward, not cold, but peaceful. When they first moved into the house, he used to love quiet nights like this. Ellie would read by the window while he worked late, and they'd barely talk, but it wasn't distance then, it was comfort. Somewhere along the way, that kind of quiet had turned into something else, a wall between them instead of a bridge. His eyes drifted toward the corner of the room, where one of Ellie's unfinished canvases leaned against the wall. It was a vague silhouette, painted in dark strokes surrounded by uneven halos of color, like someone trying to step out of light into shadow. He didn't know what it was meant to be, but it unsettled him. He stood for a while, staring at the figure, before turning away. The house felt alive in a strange way, the soft rain, the faint hums, the small creaks, like it was breathing along with him. But the more he noticed it, the more he realized it wasn't life he was feeling. It was emptiness filling every corner where her voice used to be. Hours passed quietly. The wine dulled his thoughts, but not his unease. By midnight, he picked up his phone out of habit. 2 missed calls from Ellie blinked on the screen. His stomach tightened. He opened the voicemail. Static at first, then faint music, muffled voices, and something like breathing close to the microphone. Then silence. He replayed it, pressing the phone closer to his ear. It was just empty sound, but something about it felt wrong. Like she had pocket-dialed him from a place she shouldn't have been. He tried calling her back. No answer. Once, twice, 3 times. Each attempt went straight to voicemail. He told himself she was just busy, still at the party, laughing, talking, losing track of time. That was Ellie. Still, he poured another glass of wine, slower this time. The rain outside thickened into a steady rhythm. When he finally went to bed, the sheets were cold on her side. For the first time in months, he fell asleep without waiting for her. And for the first time, the silence truly felt complete. The sound came just before dawn, faint, metallic, out of place. David stirred awake to the soft jingle of keys at the door. For a moment, he thought he was dreaming. Then the lock turned, and the door creaked open. He glanced at the clock. 3:17 a.m. Ellie stood in the doorway, soaked through from the rain. Her hair clung to her face, her makeup streaked into shadows beneath her eyes. She didn't speak. For several seconds, she simply stood there, unmoving, her gaze fixed on him. Not angry, not sad, just empty. David sat up slowly. "Ellie," he whispered. She blinked as though waking from a trance, then closed the door behind her with quiet precision. Without answering, she slipped off her shoes, leaving faint wet marks on the floor, and walked toward the bathroom. Her movements were slow, almost deliberate, as if she were relearning how to move her own body. "Are you okay?" he asked again, his voice low, uncertain. "It was fine," she said without looking at him. Her tone was flat, her words distant. "Go back to sleep." The bathroom door closed behind her, and the faint rush of water followed. David sat there listening to the sound of the shower, the steady rhythm of it filling the house. But beneath it, he thought he could still hear something else, a soft humming, or maybe whispering, carried through the pipes. He couldn't tell if it was real or just the echo of his own exhaustion. When she came to bed later, she said nothing. She turned her back to him, her breathing even and slow. He lay awake, staring at the ceiling, feeling the cold air settle over them both like a sheet of glass. The house felt colder somehow, not because of the rain, but because she had brought something in with her. Something unseen. By morning, the world seemed normal again, almost too normal. Sunlight filled the kitchen, and Ellie was already up, making coffee. She was humming softly, a tune David didn't recognize. Her hair was dry, her smile faint but steady. If not for the faint smell of rain still clinging to her clothes, he might have believed nothing had happened. He tried to start light conversation. "How was the party?" She didn't look up. It was normal. Just small talk. "Who was there?" he asked. "The usual people. You wouldn't have liked it." Her answers were neat, practiced, like lines from a script she'd rehearsed. When she turned to hand him his mug, her sleeve slid up slightly. A dark bruise, thin but deep, circled her wrist. "What happened there?" he asked. Ellie froze. Then, with a faint smile, she pulled the sleeve down. "Nothing. Just bumped into something." He nodded slowly, but something inside him tightened. When she left the room to get ready, he glanced at her phone sitting on the counter. He hesitated, then unlocked it. No new messages. No missed calls. The entire call log, including his from last night, was gone. The silence between them that morning wasn't peaceful anymore. It felt rehearsed. Heavy. And as Ellie hummed that strange, unfamiliar melody, David realized, whatever had come home that night wasn't quite the same woman who had left. The days that followed were quiet, but not the kind of quiet David used to crave. It was a different silence now, one that seemed to hum faintly beneath the walls, like something breathing just out of sight. Ellie moved through the house, as if she were half remembering how to live in it. She spoke when spoken to, smiled when expected, cooked, cleaned, painted, but there was no warmth in any of it. Most evenings, she disappeared into her small studio, painting until long past midnight. David sometimes peeked in. Her new work was unlike anything she'd done before. Violent streaks of color, faceless figures stretching toward something unseen, layers of paint so dark they seemed to absorb the light. He didn't dare ask what they meant. The one time he tried, she just said, "I'm trying to paint the quiet," and turned back to her canvas. Sleep no longer brought rest. David started waking to the faintest sounds, footsteps in the hallway, keys turning in the lock, whispers carried by the wind outside. More than once, he thought he heard the same faint breathing from the voicemail, echoing near his ear as he drifted between waking and sleep. One night, he jolted awake to find Ellie standing in the dark hallway, motionless. She was facing the wall where their wedding photo hung. The dim light from the street lamp caught the edge of her profile, pale, still, unreadable. "Ellie." His voice cracked through the silence. She didn't turn. "It's too quiet here," she whispered. He wanted to ask what she meant, but something in her tone rooted him in place, as if answering might break something delicate, or invite something else in. When he blinked, she was already walking back toward the studio. By day, she seemed normal again. But David couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Sometimes he'd catch a glimpse of movement in the corner of his eye, a door gently swinging shut, a curtain shifting though the windows were sealed. Once, he returned from work to find her painting moved across the room, though Ellie swore she hadn't touched it. The voicemail replayed in his head more often now. The faint static, the half-heard laughter, the breath that might have been hers, or someone else's. He stopped trying to rationalize it. Logic didn't fit anymore. 3 days later, his phone rang. The caller ID flashed Rachel. "Hey," she said, her voice hesitant. "Is Ellie doing okay?" David's stomach tightened. "Why?" "She just seemed off at the party. I've been thinking about it. She left early, said she didn't feel well." "Early," he repeated. "Yeah, around 10, I think." He froze. "You're sure?" "Pretty sure." She looked scared, David. "I thought maybe you pick her up."
His throat went dry. "No."
"She got home after 3. A long pause. "Then who was she with?" "That night," David asked Ellie directly. She laughed softly at first, brushing it off. Rachel must be confused, but when he kept pressing, her smile faltered. Her eyes darted to the window, just for a second, before she said, "I told you it was a normal night." The air between them felt thin, fragile. She spoke gently, almost kindly, but there was a tremor underneath, like she was holding something back, a truth that didn't want to be spoken aloud. And for the first time, David wondered if the silence that filled their house wasn't empty at all. It was waiting. David couldn't shake the unease anymore. Every corner of the house whispered questions he couldn't answer. One evening, when Ellie went out for groceries, he finally did what he had been avoiding. He checked the dashcam in her car. The small red light blinked as he scrolled through the files. At first, everything seemed normal. The hum of the road, the glow of passing headlights. Then at 10:43 p.m., she slowed down. The GPS location placed her on a rural road outside town, nowhere near the party. On the screen, her headlights illuminated an empty stretch of asphalt. Then movement. A shadow, human-shaped, but wrong, appeared at the edge of the frame, walking toward the car. Ellie's breathing grew heavier in the recording. The camera flickered once, twice, then went dark. He froze the last clear frame. Ellie's face turned toward something unseen, eyes wide, her mouth slightly open, as if she were about to scream. His hands trembled. That evening, he tried to show her the footage. But when he plugged the drive into his laptop, the file was gone. Every trace of it, deleted. When he told her, Ellie's expression drained of color. She insisted she hadn't touched the dashcam, that she didn't remember stopping anywhere. Her voice shook for the first time since that night. Later, in the darkness, David woke to the sound of whispering. He turned his head. Ellie was sitting upright beside him, eyes closed, murmuring to someone who wasn't there. Her lips formed the words. He said he'd follow me home. "Ellie," he whispered, touching her shoulder. She gasped awake, eyes wild, staring into the dark corner of the room. For a moment, it looked like she was seeing something move there, something he couldn't. The next morning, she was outside in the yard, barefoot, painting with furious strokes. On the canvas stood a figure, tall, shapeless, black, beside a house that looked unmistakably like theirs. David stepped closer. "Ellie, what do you remember from that night?" She didn't answer at first. Then, the brush fell from her hand. "I don't know what's real anymore," she sobbed. "Something followed me back. I can feel it. It's not you I'm afraid of. It's what came home with me." The wind picked up, howling softly around them, carrying the faintest sound of footsteps across the gravel. The silence between them pressed heavier than ever before. David realized the quiet he had once cherished had turned into something alive, something that breathed when they did not. Underscore 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 underscore. Weeks slipped by in a blur of gray mornings and long, uneasy nights. Ellie stopped painting altogether. Her canvases, once full of light and motion, stood against the walls like tombstones. The color had drained from her life, and from the house itself. David moved into the guest room. Some nights, he woke to her voice murmuring softly, almost tenderly, as though speaking to someone unseen in the dark. He never went to check. One night, unable to bear the uncertainty, he replayed that old voicemail again, the one from the party night. This time, as the static hissed, he heard something new, a whisper of his own name, spoken slowly, almost lovingly, by a voice that wasn't Ellie's. The house was silent again, but not peaceful. The quiet seemed to shift with every breath, every flicker of light, like something unseen was listening back. Then one morning, Ellie was gone. Her car still sat in the driveway. Her shoes were by the door. Only her last painting remained on the easel, the dark figure now standing inside the house. David sat in the same chair he had the night she left for the party, the ticking clock filling the empty air. The silence wrapped around him like a memory that refused to fade. The silence after she left was calm once, he whispered to no one. But now, it waits for her like I do. Thanks for watching. For more videos, please subscribe. Our channel Awesome Visual Story.